Hi everyone, Susan Storm here. I'm the founder of PsychologyJunkie.com and a certified MBTI practitioner. And today we're going to be talking about the ENFP personality type and how to find out if this is your best fit personality type. ENFPs are the visionaries, the idea generators, the champions of possibility. They come up with dozens of ideas before you've even had your morning coffee. They are super inspiring to be around, and they're often world changers. In this video, we're going to dive deep into the mind of the ENFP, how they think, what their cognitive functions are, what drives them crazy, what makes them truly come alive. Let's start with the basics. ENFP stands for Extrovert, Intuitive, Feeling, and Perceiving. So first, let's start with what that E means in ENFP. E means extroverted. Extroverts have energy that is directed outwards towards people, objects, and activities in the world around them. The outside world is often a springboard for ideas and inspiration for the ENFP. Next, the N in ENFP stands for intuitive. Intuitives are more interested in the abstract than the tangible. They're always thinking about what could be or what will be rather than just focusing on what is. They're interested in potential and possibility and ideas and insights more than experiences, facts, and cold hard reality. Next, the F in ENFP is for feeling. While logic is cool and everything, feeling types are very heart-driven. They focus on what aligns with their personal values and the emotional impact of their decisions. And lastly, we have the P, which stands for perceiving. Perceivers take an open-ended exploratory approach to life rather than following a really rigid set of rules and structures and routines. They're less consistent, but they're also more open to being spontaneous, to being flexible, and keeping their options open to see where life takes them. Right, so now that we've scratched the surface of what it means to be an ENFP, what those four letters mean, let's get a bit deeper. Now we're going to look at their cognitive functions. Cognitive functions are essentially the mental tools you use when you are observing the world around you, taking in information, and making decisions. They're the lenses through which you understand life. The ENFP's dominant cognitive function is called Extraverted Intuition, or NE for short. If ENFPs had a superpower, this would be it. They tend to live and breathe extroverted intuition without really having to put a lot of conscious effort into it. Think of it as your preferred hand when you're writing. For me, I'll use myself as an example. I'm right-handed, so when I have to sign my name, I use my right hand, and I don't really have to think that hard about it. It comes pretty naturally. Whereas if I have to sign my name with my left hand, I would have to think really hard about it, and it would take a lot of energy, and it probably wouldn't look that good. So the dominant function is like your preferred hand. It comes naturally. You don't have to put a lot of energy into it, and it's fairly satisfying to use, and your results are generally higher quality. Extroverted intuition is all about patterns. It's all about connections, possibilities, and potential. It's why ENFPs can take two seemingly unrelated things, say quantum mechanics and your morning coffee, and somehow create an entire TED Talk about it. Their mind is a non-stop idea factory, constantly asking, what if? Why not? And how can I make this more interesting? Ever been in a conversation with an ENFP and all of a sudden they stop and it's like they've gotten some weird insight or made some rapid connection that seems random to you, but then you find out it's actually connected to everything you were talking about before? This is extroverted intuition at work. 1 second, they're talking about their weekend plans, and then the next, they're sketching a startup idea using AI, personalized astrology readings, and a subscription box for, I don't know, ethically sourced rocks. But to be fair, their ideas are probably way better than that. I just had to come up with that in the spur of the moment, and it was not very good, I'll be honest. If you are an ENFP, new connections and possibilities are constantly popping up inside your mind. You see the overarching themes before you see the small details. You're more interested in the big picture. And you tend to jump from thought to thought and idea to idea like a pinball machine. You also enjoy playing with different perspectives, new ways of seeing things. You love really novel, interesting ideas that anyone who can give you an idea you've never thought of before or a possibility you've never dreamed of before, that's super exciting to you. This does sometimes come with a slight negative side effect. FPs love options. They like lots of options. Too many options sometimes. They want to try everything, which is why making a decision can feel like trying to pick out just one movie on Netflix when you actually want to watch 10 at the same time. But here's the thing. ENFPs don't just generate ideas for fun. Okay, sometimes they do. They want their ideas to mean something. That's where their auxiliary function comes in. Their auxiliary function or second function is called introverted feeling, or FI for short. FI is all about what's personally meaningful to them, what their personal values are, what feels right, what feels authentic and genuine. ENFPs need their life to align with what feels right to them. ENFPs often feel like they have a calling or a drive to do something that has a big picture impact. They're the ones starting movements, launching creative projects, and fighting for causes that matter, whether it's social justice, environmental activism, or just making sure their friends get treated fairly. They will speak up. They don't just care about the underdogs, they're going to make sure that everyone else does too. FPs feel things deeply, and that depth fuels their creativity and it fuels the kind of possibilities that they come up with. It's not that they just want to come up with a bunch of possibilities for no reason. Usually, those possibilities are about making the world a better place for a cause that matters to them. In their quiet moments, when they get away from people, that's when they can really tune into that introverted feeling side. And they can sort through their ideas, their values, their experiences, their emotions, and figure out what really matters to them. Introverted feeling is a very personal function, and it really thrives during alone time. So it's very important, even though ENFPs are extroverts, even though they tend to have a lot of energy for stimulation and interaction in the outside world, they still really need that alone time so that they can get into introverted feelings, so that they can really make sure, hey, am I just moving from idea to idea, experience to experience, or am I actually doing things that matter to me? Am I following my heart? Am I being authentic? Am I living in alignment with my moral compass and my ethics? And the thing about introverted feeling is those ethics are deeply personal. It's not just about rules you were handed as a child, for example. Introverted feeling doesn't care as much about what society says, what your parents say, or what the most, I don't know, socially appropriate rules are. It's more concerned with your own definition of morality and your own definition of right and wrong. This doesn't mean you just choose the easy way and what feels good. This is a common misconception about introverted feeling. It's more about just questioning the values you're handed down and asking, why is that the case? Why is that right or wrong? ENFPs and other feeling perceiving types often are very skeptical about values that are just given to them. For example, if a parent were to tell an ENFP it's bad to tattletale, for example, an ENFP might be like, why is that wrong? Shouldn't we get help if someone hurts us? Shouldn't we get help if someone does something wrong to someone else? How can we fix the problem if we don't tell someone? They don't just say, okay, yes, sure, I won't tattletale. They actually question it. So actually, ENFPs can be fairly argumentative because they're constantly asking why when it comes to values, to get deeper and deeper into the actual ethical core of the value, to understand, is this something I actually want to subscribe to, or is this something that society is just telling me because of social norms is the right thing to do? We often talk about how thinking perceivers, TP types, are really argumentative and skeptical. But feeling perceivers can also be very argumentative and skeptical, but it's more about matters of right and wrong and ethics. All right, so now we've talked a little bit about the ENFP superpowers of extroverted intuition and introverted feeling. Let's move on to their lower functions, the tertiary function of extroverted thinking. Extroverted thinking is like the get it done function. It's very focused on objective logic, structure, organization, making sure your outer world is logically organized so that you can achieve a goal as quickly as possible. It's very time focused and has a very commanding presence. So deep inside every ENFP is a little voice that's saying, hey, maybe we should organize this. And you'll even find that ENFPs are pretty good at coming up with lists, to-do lists, writing out plans on a whiteboard. This is the part of them, the extroverted thinking part of them, that really does want a sense of structure, a proactive nature, execution. When this function kicks in, ENFPs really become powerhouses of productivity. They can take their ideas and actually make them happen. Mapping out action steps, getting the right people involved, breaking big dreams into manageable tasks, and even finishing projects. You often hear that ENFPs start a bunch of projects and never finish them. The ENFPs who finish them usually have a good relationship with their tertiary function of extroverted thinking. But not all ENFPs have a really good relationship with extroverted thinking. Some ENFPs really stay in a one-sided place of being all about ideas or maybe even their values, but they resist getting into action and actually executing on their ideas or organizing their ideas. These ENFPs are more likely to start 10 projects and then before they've even finished one, or they come up with lots of to-do lists. So they're satisfying that extroverted thinking side, but they're not actually following through on it and getting anything accomplished. They can get so caught up in the whole brainstorming process that they forget about actually starting or executing. Here are some signs that extroverted thinking is underdeveloped in an ENFP. One, they procrastinate on all the boring details. Who needs structure when there's another great idea on the horizon? Number two, they struggle to stay on top of deadlines. Number three, they get super motivated for about 10 minutes and then forget about it. And number four, they want to be productive, but they don't know where to begin. But when an ENFP develops this function, they can be extremely proactive and motivating. They learn how to bring their ideas to life in a very structured, proactive way. They start setting real deadlines, prioritizing tasks, and showing up even when it gets hard or boring. And when that happens, the world better watch out because they can be really unstoppable. Now, we talked about when extroverted thinking is underdeveloped, when ENFPs become too one-sided. There's another thing that can happen just to make matters more complicated, and that's when ENFPs lean too much on their extroverted functions. So the ENFP's two extroverted functions are extroverted intuition and extroverted thinking. Their introverted functions are introverted feeling and introverted sensing. As extroverts, they're naturally going to get most of their energy from engaging in the world around them. And this is a good thing. But sometimes they do this to the detriment of their introverted functions. And when this happens, ENFPs can get stuck in what's called an NE loop. This is where ENFPs become a little bit disconnected from that inner compass, that inner value system of introverted feeling, and they loop back and forth between generating ideas and brainstorming ideas and seeking out new possibilities, and then jumping into action mode and decision mode and commanding mode. And these ENFPs, they can come up with these massive to-do lists and dozens of ideas, and then they can get really commanding, even bossy about getting everyone to fall in line with the idea that they had. They find themselves constantly in action, jumping from one idea to the next. These ENFPs, when they're in a loop, they feel ungrounded. They feel disconnected from themselves. They feel a frantic, restless energy. They can get very stuck in busy work, feeling like they just need to check things off a list and get stuff done, but that stuff doesn't actually have real meaning to them. And this is because they've gotten disconnected from their introverted feeling side. They're just looping back and forth between these two extroverted functions that have nothing to do with their own personal values, what is personally significant to them. If you are an ENFP in this NETE loop, the important thing to do is to make some time to be alone, to get into your own heart, to get into your own thoughts, to get into your own emotions. And it might feel a little scary at first, it might feel vulnerable, it might even feel boring, but it's actually really important because we ENFPs need that introverted feeling guide. That's the quiet, passionate guide that helps them to make decisions and seek out possibilities that actually will satisfy them on a deeper level. And now we come to the Achilles heel of the ENFP personality type, the inferior function, which is called Introverted Sensing, or SI. This is the part of the ENFP that can get weirdly nostalgic, that really wants routine, order, consistency, a sense of reliability and sameness, but it's the little voice that the ENFP is most likely to sweep under the rug and ignore. ENFPs tend to chase new possibility, novelty, and transformation and change, while ignoring that voice that really wants consistency. Introverted sensing is all about remembering past details, following traditions, paying attention to past experiences to look into those experiences for wisdom that can be applied to the present and to the future. So introverted sensing will distill a memory from the past and extract meaning from it and then seek to recreate that experience, creating a routine or a tradition that is personally meaningful to the person. So ENFPs are big picture thinkers, which means details, structure, following instructions exactly to the T, no thank you. ENFPs aren't always the best about remembering exact details. They don't tend to trust their memories. They often forget things easily because they've moved on 10 possibilities from the thing they were talking about 5 minutes ago. They tend to recall a feeling of the past rather than the specific details of the past. Since introverted sensing deals with routine and consistency, ENFPs struggle with doing the same thing over and over again. Here are some signs that you have inferior introverted sensing, undeveloped introverted sensing. 1, you tend to forget important dates or appointments unless you work really hard to document them in like your phone app. 2, you struggle with follow through and the nitty-gritty details on long-term projects. 3, you resist structure even when it's helpful. And 4, you tend to feel really trapped by routine. And when you have to do really fine, detailed activities, say doing your taxes or organizing your filing cabinet, you might feel a sense of panic. I'm really not trying to be hard on ENFPs. Introverted sensing is not bad. When an ENFP starts to develop this function, even in small ways, they can find balance between their free-spirited nature and the need for consistency. And when they have a good relationship with both extroverted intuition and introverted sensing, they feel a lot more grounded, they feel a lot more comfortable. Ways ENFPs can develop their introverted sensing include doing things like journaling a few times a week, creating some loose daily routines that don't feel too restrictive. And when they journal, by the way, try to fill in all the details that you can remember on something. Look at your life and look for some habits that you could create that could be really consistent but also meaningful. Things that your heart feels driven to. If you can connect your introverted sensing to your introverted feeling in some way, then it will be more likely to keep using it. Now, this doesn't mean you need to go all in on introverted sensing by any means. Actually, better if people don't try to devote all their time and energy to developing their inferior function. It's more about getting little bite-sized segments of time to focus on it, but definitely not hours and hours. For example, if your room is always a mess, you could create an introverted sensing routine of setting a timer for 15 minutes every morning and playing some of your favorite songs while you tidy up your room. And you could just say 3 times a week, I'm going to do this 15 minutes, my favorite songs to make it fun, and then I'll get through it. If you want to get better at texting your friends back and responding to messages from your parents or people that matter to you, you could set a weekly alert on your phone and spend 20 minutes once a week texting people back, responding to messages and emails. But again, this is just in small bite-sized increments. You don't have to do it in this really big 100% all-in way. So let's go over 5 signs that you are an ENFP. 1, your brain is a nonstop idea factory. You can't walk into a room, read an article, or overhear a random conversation without your brain firing off 10 new ideas. Connections where others don't, like realizing that a reality show concept and a medieval jousting competition could somehow merge into the next big thing. My extroverted intuition is really bad, so when I try to use it, by the way, on these live recorded videos, it tends to come up with really absurd ideas, and just believe me that ENFPs would come up with way better ideas. 2, you love people, but you also need to escape them. Yes, you're an extrovert, but you also need that alone time to really get into your values, to understand your emotions, to unpack what you're feeling, and to make sure that you're living in alignment with what really matters to you. That brings me to number 3. You hate small talk. Yeah, you can do small talking, and you can enjoy it if it's going to get somewhere deeper. But if you're just stuck in a constant state of small talk where people are just sharing really day-to-day stories that have no real significance and it's going on and you can't seem to find any deeper conversation, then it feels very draining. I know lots of ENFPs who tell me that they absolutely despise small talk. They're always trying to get conversations to go deeper, but everyone gets scared away when that happens. I also know a couple of ENFPs who say they love small talk, but they do have the hopes that it's going to get deeper or that it's just like a few minutes and then they're on with their day. Number 4, routine can feel like a cage to you. The idea of doing something every day is nightmare fuel. You like to keep things spontaneous. You like to have an open-ended schedule, even if that means your schedule is sometimes absolute chaos. Number 5, you have a very deep personal moral code. You don't just accept things at face value. You have to question things. You have to know that you actually believe it in your heart. You don't just go along with what society says. You question everything and you carve your own path based on what feels right to you personally. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope this gives you a better understanding of the ENFP personality type and whether or not this is your best fit personality type. If you'd like to find out more, I have many more articles on my website at psychologyjunkie.com. I've also written a book called Discovering You, Unlocking the Power of Personality Type, which goes in depth into all 16 personality types. And if you liked this video and would like to see more like this, please subscribe and hit that bell so that you can be notified when more videos like this come up. And if you have any thoughts, be sure to leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. See you next time, everyone.